kick things off, I don't know if you've seen actually what came out in the UK yesterday. They said gyms won't be allowed open until the 1st of October. That's what the UK said. Yeah, 1st of October, they put out their plan. And I was kind of reading the comments underneath. Obviously, this was on social media, the post that I was reading. And it was like people's mental health, people's depression, people's anxiety, all those kind of things. It's actually going to create more damage. Essentially, this was the bulk of the comments. Now it's going to create more damage. Open the gyms, open the gyms. The gyms need to be open. It's my sanctuary. It's my place. I was kind of looking at it from two point of views. I was kind of looking at it like, I agree with everything, but then at the same time, I was like saying, should we only have one sense of like, um, if you want to say place to, because I know we talked off air as well, where should we only have one sense where we can kind of get rid of that, or should this kind of make us aware that you should kind of have two things in case something did happen to say like the gym industry or something else, do you know, that kind of way? What's your thoughts just on that alone?
I think it's like when we talked about the structure, right? Is that it becomes part of people's daily routine. And I think if you said to a lot, and I've had the same issue with a lot of clients, or I don't want to say issue, but it's like concern raised with a lot of clients who, and even friends and trainers and things who I've spoken to, is that they go, I just don't have the motivation, because you lose that same reliance on what you've known as an output, or what you've known as kind of I'm going to go here, I'm going to select these things, and I enjoy working with this. And there's a lot of people who I think, it's the feel, it's the presence of being in a certain space, it's the feel of equipment, it's like how things are moving, it's your body moving in space. And for people to have that, if you've had years of that, then to suddenly have something stripped away that wasn't, I think for a lot of people, because it wasn't necessarily a choice, it's been something that has been placed upon them, that they have to suddenly go into this lockdown, that again, they don't feel they're sick, they don't feel they're an at-risk population or whatever it is. And so we get to a point where socially people start to feel that, well, why am I suffering, or why am I missing out because of someone else who I need to be worried about? And so we have this kind of this movement initially of, oh yeah, let's work together. And then it kind of like, it's the greater good, if you will. And then kind of reaches that point where suddenly, okay, but I'm sick of doing everything to protect people who I don't know, or they don't even mean anything to me. So I think it shifts. There's a perception of validity of these answers if you're affected directly. So for example, if you and I had grandparents or parents or siblings or whoever that was directly affected by this, and they were at-risk populations, or you've seen them get sick or gone through something, suddenly this has a whole different impact on you. The weight that it carries, and the weight of that impact and choices, it affects you completely differently. But if you're not affected by it directly, and you're being told, yes, but we're doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and you're like, yeah, but that's not me. Suddenly it kind of becomes this choice of, why is someone else dictating what I can and can't do, purely because I've got to be worried about whoever it is that I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so there's that big social disconnect, right?
It makes it in the beginning, I agree with what you said. It's like all come together, all want to do this, and then at some point it shifts where it's like, I'm doing so much to help others, but who's kind of helping me at the end of the day? I need to help myself, because if I don't look after myself, I essentially can't look after others. If I'm not in a good headspace, if I'm not in a good position, if I'm not, thinking clear, how can I, make those? Because a lot of the times I kind of think back to when I was younger. When you're not in a good headspace, it's very easy to make a very irrational and, a decision, or, a silly decision that can, potentially ruin, whether it's work in the gym, whether it's work in career, whatever it is, relationship, etc., etc. And it's like, okay, yeah, we understand the principle of, hygiene, and I think there is going to be a massive shift, and gyms are going to not be the same as they used to be. Like, it's not, well, it might take some time to get back to that, but I agree with what you're saying, that at a certain point, it's like, who am I helping if I'm not helping myself, if I'm every day having to, adhere to these? Because essentially what it is it's like, if your only outlet is the gym, and say you hate your job, or you hate your lifestyle, and you spend, because I remember being maybe 15, 16, and I always used to get slagged because I used to spend 4 hours in the in the gym, like. But that's just where I went. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, it was either that or it was going to be, out with the lads, doing stupid things, trying to, you know, figure stuff out. But I used to go and I used to do like 2 hours on the bike. And the guy that actually owned the gym used to say to me, like, do you mind if I run home? His house was close. And you just watch that's kind of how I got into the whole, gym industry, because I was kind of on reception at the same time as sitting on just a stationary bike. I'd just be there for 2 or 3 hours. So I can 100% relate to the people who are, feeling like, in Ireland now, you haven't got anything out in New Zealand yet, have you?
So I'm Australia,
Oh yeah, you're in
but
Australia
it's
at the minute. Yeah, yeah.
I know I've got the strong Kiwi accent coming in fucking
Yeah.
fast, but yeah. So we've just had part announcements today, in the sense of Queensland supposedly is going to be opening. I don't know, like the rules are supposedly going to be getting announced a little bit later, like our you imagine kind of like the states, right, as like governors and things like that. I think some of the
Hmm.
stuff in Australia is that we've got our prime minister overviewing general rules, and then you can run rules in those states at different timeframes based on kind of, I think it's the premier or whoever it is, who like the state people who are running those states, they make rules as well, so they can decide timeframes and things like that. And so we've just had a 3-stage process or opening rollout, whatever you want to call it, that's been announced, and supposedly by, I think they're saying mid to end July. Stage 2 is when gyms are going to be opening, and so they're saying by mid to end July they should have gone through all 3 stages. However, some states may not have, and where I think the difficulty lies is that, let's say, and this is something my partner and I were talking about today, is that let's say the gyms open, the gyms are opening on a limited capacity. So we can't just all of a sudden have the same sense of usage or whatever it was that we were paying for previously, that it was like, okay, well, I'll just go to the gym whenever I feel like it. And if you've got a 24-hour gym, for example, oh, well, I'll go there at 7 a.m. and so will 500 others. Maybe not. There's a very limited capacity of people who are now allowed in that space. And the downside of that is, like, if I turn up and let's say they're only allowing 10 people in, we still haven't worked out the details yet of, am I number 11 and I've got to go home? And in which case, if 7 a.m. and to 8 a.m. is my only time to train because I've also got work or whatever else, do I not have to pay my membership? Like, how do these things work? And these are all details that haven't yet been ironed out. But if we go back a second to what you were mentioning, like with mental health, I think, like we talked about off air, it was that the mental health side of things, let's say I tell you not to look at a red car. I'm like, red cars don't exist. And suddenly you're out there and you see a red car, and then all you can freaking see is red cars, right? It's like, shit, all I can see is red cars. And I'm like,
Yeah.
did you see the 50 white cars that you had today? And you're like, no, all I saw was like the 1,000 red cars. So you get so focused on, I'm missing out on the gym all the time. And it's like, someone keeps taking away my option for the gym. Why can't I not go back to the gym? And it's like, okay, you've got a lot of other things. I know they're not things that you may have chosen in the first place, but we do have a lot of other routes that you can work on. And for a lot of people, I'm not disagreeing that, like, yes, exercise is important for mental health, but exercise is such an encompassing word and term of, like, what are we doing? It's an activity of what? Like, it's not defined to a gym. I mean, they say going for a run, you're going to feel the endorphins, you feel the runner's high. And it's like, yeah, running's uncomfortable if you don't do it, but you can start somewhere. But we get so obsessed on, no, someone has taken away my gym access. Yeah, okay, we're all missing out on that. But look at also the positives, which I know this is a real tangent, but it's like, look at the positives that have come of this. Is like, I've been watching things about, supposedly they're saying the ozone layer and things are starting to fix back up. Supposedly some of the air quality through some of the worst cities in the world starting to improve. Animals are in places like, I watched a video of a hippopotamus on a beach that's normally packed with tourists, and the hippopotamus is going for a swim. It's like, the world has shifted accordingly based on the actions that we've made, right? Not everything is negative, but if we always want to view it through that negative lens, that's all we're going to see. And I completely get it, because it's like, I've had the same thing of that lacking motivation and not wanting to train and not feeling like I'm getting the same enjoyment out of training. But at the same time, there's other things I can be working on, right? Like, okay, I can go for a walk. Like, how do we make do with the situation we're in. And I think, yes, we can sit and we can spiral into negativity about what we're missing out on, or we can decide, okay, well, it is what it is for now. How do I work around this? And I'm not saying it's going to be the same. And I'm not saying that you're going to necessarily be chasing the same results or whatever it else may be. But it's like, would you rather be waking up tomorrow and being alive, or would you rather be in hospital for however many days because you may have got something? And again, it's like, I'm not saying that that happens to everyone, but it's just, if we're going to think worst case scenario of I'm missing out on the gym, okay, think about worst case scenario of what happens if you get sick, like, or what happens if your family member gets sick or something else. It's like, we have to think a little bit bigger beyond self at the moment, purely because that's kind of how the world has been impacted. And if you go to the gym and then suddenly that gym gets an infection or a spread again, what happens? They close the door. We're going to be back in square one, right? Like,
Yeah.
my approach was always from day one, is I much rather would have had a 6-month lockdown or whatever it is, have a full thing where we just lock everything down, then we drag it out for years. I mean, God, in 2 years' time, we wouldn't still want to be in the same position where they're like, yeah, we're tentatively opening gyms. I'd rather get it over and done with, but I just know that, yes, it sucks at the moment.
Yeah, so rather than going back and forward from things, it's essentially you get it done, get it out of the way, and move on. But I want something that you said there was and it made me think, like, where you focus all your energy, that's what grows. Like, if you focus all your energy on the negative parts of what's going on, you essentially become more, well, you create more negative thoughts. Then I suppose the negative thoughts sound louder every single day, as to where what you were saying there, if you look at the positives, and they might not be positives relative to how you used to think before, but I think if you can um shift some sort of like mindset towards, okay, yeah, my gyms might be shut, okay, so let's say I'm a typical I'm just going to say typical gym goer, comes down, likes to lift and likes to do a small bit of cardio, necessarily isn't flexible, probably can't touch their toes, just the probably me, maybe 2-3 years ago, and like right now is a time where I know it's different, but like you can set whether it's a flexibility goal, whether it's a like a conditioning goal, whether it's a weight loss goal. Like I wanted to touch on this also as well. Should people be trying to lose weight during the obviously the pandemic? But yeah, like right now I think people just need to, what you said there is brilliant, where it's just you need to kind of shift where your energy is going and where your focus is going. And like you said, if you only focus on the red, you'll only see red. So if you focus on the green, essentially you'll only see green, and I think that's a great way for people to be able to at least start. Because I was going to ask you, if I'm a male, typical, say let's say 35, maybe yeah, around 35, and I'm down and I'm used to doing like a bro split, like legs one day, chest one day, back another day, and I don't really know how to train outside. I only know how to run, and no one's ever really taught me how to train from home. I have no equipment. Where could somebody like that start, in terms of, like, right now they've been told in Ireland, we've been out of gym action for 6-7 weeks, and they've just been hit with news that it's going to be another 3 months, and they're kind of going, well, I can't really I can't see even though there is a light at the end of the tunnel and people should be looking on the positives. um how does someone like that, who doesn't necessarily, who's never dipped and dabbed in like running, walking, like, do they just start and they just say all of a sudden, right, I'm gonna start running, or I'm gonna start, whether it's press ups from home? Like, what would you recommend someone like that to start doing, if they've just done it for years, just like I said, train chest, train arms, train back, someone like that?
So, I mean, okay, so one point you brought up there was, let's say it's flexibility, let's say it's conditioning, let's say it's fat loss, right? Take a moment for, if you're in the gym and I walked up to you, let's say you and I are in the same facility, and I'm like, hey, Ryan, I noticed like you don't even bring you, when you're doing your bench press or when you're doing your squats, okay? Because we see this everywhere. It's like when you're doing your squats, you're only going down halfway. Why are you only going halfway? Why do you not go full depth? Oh, well, because this hurts and that hurts, and I'm too tight and my hips jam up. Okay, cool. So like we've got some things we need to work on, right? But if I walked up to you in the gym and I said to you, well, maybe you should be looking at doing some stretching, maybe you should be doing this, like these things are going to help you, not necessarily immediately, but it's kind of layered effect, and further down the line you'll prevent injuries, and you'll also, if you're addressing those weak points or addressing whatever is holding you back from progressing further or making you the better person that you could be, maybe we should work on that. And chances are people will be like, yeah, all right, fuck off, mate, leave me alone. But now it's the glaring obvious, right? You don't have, where are you going to run from it? If you have something that is holding you back, I couldn't sleep well. Okay, practice your sleep. Oh, I struggle with food. Okay, you always at home. Yes, I am. Have you thought about practicing meal prep? Like, have you thought about learning how to cook? Have you thought about practicing how to just be able to sit and read? I've got poor concentration. I'm not surprised you don't do anything to strengthen these things beyond just focusing again on, if I go to the gym or I do X, I'm going to have a result. Okay, but that one result has also, it's like, it's a multifactorial thing, right? It's like we've got so many different inputs to there that could make that result better, worse, or the same. And so if we have people who, like conditioning, for example, is that if we have people who aren't doing conditioning in the gym and they're always doing weights, now's probably the time to work on conditioning. The unfortunate part is that, yes, we have that kind of, where do I start and what do I do? Well, there's a lot of information out there. Yes, I'm not saying that all that information is necessarily reputable and all that information will make sense. But you also don't need to just go to the first, like type something into Google or search something on Instagram and accept the first thing that you see. Like we've been in this lockdown for months, right? Like there's no reason why people can't do a little bit of research. Now I understand research becomes a little bit confusing and conflicting and everyone's saying different messages and things like that. But we're also in a position where, let's say you went out and you were going to go for a run, like, yeah, there's couch to 5K apps. We can do press ups. There's so many different things that we can search out like on YouTube and on the internet, and we'll get results. And it's a case of looking through things and going, okay, does that make sense? And does that fit me? Because I think there's a lot of people as well who, let's say we had a running situation where someone wanted to improve cardiovascular fitness. Okay, well, the person who's telling you to do the run and is saying maybe start with a 10K, do they look like they're same weight, same build, same everything else? Are they giving you ways of tailoring that? Yes or no? Because if you're getting information from people who they're already in a position that you want to be, you should probably be learning from the people who are at the same position as you. And there's so much information out there and so much information that is also tailored. And I think that's something that a lot of people, they just immediately go, okay, well, I'm going to start running. So, all right, what is, I don't know, a marathon runner, what is that person doing that is like, I'm going to start doing? Oh, they're running for 2 hours a day. Cool, I'll go and do that. Yeah, you're going to be fucked after day one, right? Like let's scale it back and look at what would you like, how to run, how to start running. Like keep it really simple, not being, how do I run a marathon, or like how long do I need to run to complete a marathon? Like scale it to your expectations and where are you going and what's the rush? If you've got 6 months up your sleeve, okay, scale it out accordingly.
It's
But
funny
we're
that you
all in
said.
such this attitude of, no, I need to have it done now. Okay, but you weren't working on it in the past. So if you weren't working on it in the past, why do you suddenly have to have it done now? Start the same place you did when you first went into the gym. You were slogging your ass off for 2 to 3 hours sitting on a spin bike. I guarantee that first session that you went in probably felt like hell.
It's like
But you
people
eventually
want
got
that.
to the point where it felt easier.
It's that point where people just want to, like, they just want that instant result or that instant almost like gratification of, yeah, I done it, where it's like that's what sets you up for failure. It's that, I always say go least mode before you go beast mode. It's where you start with as little effort as possible and add bit by bit. When you tell clients that, it kind of comes across like, okay, we're not gonna go in and we're not gonna murder our sessions, and you're not gonna be leaving here feeling like you want to puke. And they kind of look at you and they're like, what do you mean, like, least mode? I'm coming to you because I want to work hard. I'm giving you all this, uh I suppose motivation, drive, etc., etc. And you're telling me, to kind of hold back. But it's that long game that people don't understand. That yes, that is, motivation only gets you to a certain point, but then it's like you're saying, with your own research and with like a calculated approach, you can actually make a lot of progress if you really tried. In terms of what you said there about running in Ireland, there's a thing where people are literally trying to run. I think it's like 100 kilometers within the month of each month, and they're doing like 10K a day, or even like 14K a day. And then there's also this other thing where they're doing, it's, I know it's all raised for charity, so it's all got a good meaning behind it. And it's 4 kilometers every 4 hours for 48 hours. So it goes into your sleep patterns where you're just running 4 hours, and then in another 4 hours you run another 4 kilometers, and so on for 2 whole days. And people are seeing this, and people are, I don't know if people are attempting this silently, but when you see that all over social media, people running, 12, 13, 14 kilometers posting, because there's this thing now where people will, screenshot their route, and essentially, like, there's these people coming in with like 3.5 minute kilometers, and like crazy statistics. Like when I run a kilometer, it might be 6.5 minutes. You know what I mean? I see someone's story and it's like 3.5. But I think what you said there is where, like, we have to not try compare ourselves to that athlete or to that, person on social media, and getting advice or information off somebody who is actually in the same position, or if not just say one, step up, is probably a really good place to start. And to be honest, if someone asked me, how do I start, like, typing in, like, if I ever have a problem, like, how to start a podcast, what do? I type into Google how to start a podcast, or YouTube how to start a podcast. So in terms of like, how do I start running, there is probably content out there that will, educate you for free and inform you on how to do that correctly, and put you in a better position than someone who just goes out and runs, like I said, 15 kilometers, and then wakes up with a sore knee, a sore hip, and then goes out the next day, and then all of a sudden is, having to figure out, shit, now I can't do anything. I can't put even weight on my left ankle. Or I actually know a guy who done his hip in from running, and now it's that knock on effect where now he's obviously disappointed because he couldn't do what he wanted to do, but now he's couch bedridden, house, bound. And as the days go on, it gets, I can see it get a little bit worse and worse and worse. Um, so that's why I always say lease mode before beast mode. I don't know if you take a similar approach, say, with, it sounds like you do.
Something you mentioned there, so like lease mode to beast mode, right? Is like, I work with Muscle Nerds Health. Is like, that's the company I work for. I've worked for them for quite a while. Is that, like, I'm one of the coaches there, and I've done all of their education. And is that when it comes to lease mode, people think lease mode is easy.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things, and especially when we look at, so the courses we teach, so if I talk just for a moment as like a program design course we teach, we go over lease mode and what it should be based on where the individual is, right? Now, everyone's leased mode and everyone's beast mode is very different. For some people, you give them lease mode and they feel like they're beasting already, when in reality, they're not. They're just like, they haven't experienced that yet. But lease mode is very different from, I'm just going to the gym and I'm dicking around and it's easy. Lease mode still has a purpose, and lease mode can still be very taxing. And I think this is where we look at what is lease mode, if you will, in quotations, and what is beast mode in quotations. And we have this sense of, okay, if I'm going to the gym and I'm beast moding, I'm kind of going balls to the wall. Okay, but there's no reason you shouldn't be going balls to the wall in lease mode. It's just having a structured approach and having a knowledgeable and strategic way forward of what are you needing to iron out so that you can take your beast mode to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of people oversight that, and they think, oh, if I'm going to be lease moding, I'm only doing a couple of sets of this, and maybe I'm just doing like, I'm fluffing around a little bit, and it's like, it's easy training. Okay, maybe if you are at a very, very basic level, that could be your lease mode if you want, and that's your, like, your general preparatory phase. You're just doing a couple of sets, and maybe you come in 3 times a week. And yes, you're not really used to training yet, or the adaptations. So you have a very low training age, and you also have a very low tolerance to training stress. That's fine. We all have to start somewhere, but you will accumulate your level of ability over time, and you'll also accumulate your resiliency to that stress. But then the problem is when we also say to people, okay, let's say I have someone who's been training for 5 years, and I say we're going to put them through a lease mode phase. If they've been going again, balls to the wall for 5 years, training as hard as they can, what they think hard as they can every session. They're under recovered. They're not necessarily overtrained, but they're just not recovering to their optimal levels. They're insufficient on sleep. They're insufficient on cardiovascular health. They're not really feeding themselves enough. Their lease mode may be cutting back, doing less training volume and focusing on ironing things out. Like if you've always been doing bilateral movements, squats, bench, those types of things, maybe we need to spend some time focusing on unilateral movements. Maybe we need to spend some time focusing on actual conditioning, structured conditioning, not just, okay, well, you're going to do HIIT intervals, but we're going to spend some time actually working on cardiac output. We're going to spend some time working on bringing everything back down and improving your recovery. So then when we do slingshot you back into harder training phases, now you're not only recovering better, but you're adapting more efficiently as well. And the results you're getting are going to be far, far greater. But then people think that like we have almost the stigma in our mind that if I said to you, okay, Ryan, today we're going to go in and we're going to do split squats, and you've been doing back squats, you're going to see split squats as kind of a pussy version of doing back squats. You're like, why are you putting me on one leg when I can already back squat 180 kilos? It's like, well, okay, because your lower back doesn't feel the best. You squat like shit and you don't really exactly be able to stand up straight afterwards. It's like, yeah, you can load the bar, great, but it doesn't mean that that's an effective movement for you currently. And that is not demonizing back squats. It's just saying if you've been doing the same movement over and over and over again, and you've ingrained poor motor habits or ingrained poor movement patterns, we need to take a step back and iron everything back out. And like, even for myself, is that I know when I go to the gym, it's like, yeah, I can do front squats. I can do all of those things, no problems. But I also spend a good chunk of my day sitting at a desk working. So I don't want to go and do more anterior dominant flexion based movements if I'm not balancing that also out with extension based movements and some stretch based movements through my hip or my chest or my back, whatever it may be. Like I want to address the areas that are weak before they become an area that is now a problem. And that is something I know you and I talked about off air a while back, was like, I don't like treating problems. I'd rather prevent problems. Because let's say it's cardiovascular health, right? You go to do a run or a jog or even a walk and you're struggling with it. Okay, that's kind of a red flag. Like if you're breathing and you feel like you're going to pass out and you're red faced and sweating balls because of just doing a very light walk on an incline, yeah, that's probably a red flag that we need to address that. And like heart rate goes through the roof and it's like, all right, we probably need to spend some time working on your cardiovascular health. Yeah, well, I'd rather not because I'm going to lose my strength gains. Yeah, but if we work on your cardiovascular health, you can get more work done in an allotted period of time when you go to the gym. So would you rather only be able to get 5 sets done, or would you rather get 6, 7, or 8 sets done? Would we rather be able to get more work done? Would we rather be able to get a greater tonnage of work done? Like everything can be negotiated, right? And we can always find ways of getting ourselves out of it. But then at the end of the day, if you're not recovering well, let's say your cardiovascular health's not optimal, you're probably not going to sleep well. Now, we only have one opportunity typically in every 24 hours to sleep. So we want to be making the most of that. And if you're currently at a 50% sleep rate, yeah, I'd rather have you at a 70 or 80% sleep rate or quality or efficiency, whatever, and optimize the time that you have through other means that I can control during the day. But it's not going to be comfortable the same way you didn't walk into the gym and just load 180 kilos on day one and do a back squat. You took time to get there, and we're going to take time to get these other means up and running and improved as well.
Yeah, no, that I want to just pull back on one thing you said just before I forget it, because I try to keep it in my head as we're going. Um, where it's like we talked off air as well, where like you were referencing the importance of recovery to an athlete like that might be used to training back squats, or doing like 1-2 rep maxes where they don't have that endurance to go for maybe an incline walk or a couple of more reps. And it's where as coaches and as trainers, you said negotiating, it's almost like you have to make it relevant to them. You have to make, like, for you to help someone, you have to be able to make them see sense in why you're suggesting what it is you're doing. Because straight away you say to somebody who gets up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning to go train, and they go have a shit session every single day, but it's the habit of getting up at 5 that they've told themselves that they have to do. and they work late and they don't get home and they sit on the couch and they fall asleep at like half 11, 12. It's where like having to tell that person to go to bed at say 9 o'clock if they want to keep that schedule in, they'll turn around and say, well, I'm not willing to give up this, or I'm not willing to go to bed early, or yeah, and they'll kind of forget you said it to them. But when you say to them, like, if you get 3 extra hours of sleep every single night, like in a couple of, like, not instantly but maybe instantly, in a couple of weeks, you should notice huge improvements in your in your strength, in your workouts, in your performance. And when they actually listen, and I found this a lot of times, especially the clients that I would train would be typically older men, and it's very hard for me to kind of communicate across to them and try get them to see sense in what I'm suggesting. Whether that's meal prep, something here in Ireland that people tend to do is especially men, is not be responsible for their own food. Kind of that age demographic between 40 and kind of 60, where they'll just kind of eat what's in front of them, or go to the shop. So I've often had guys who, I don't do food, what I mean? That's what I've got in response. And I'm like, but you need to know, like, about food. Like, if you're coming to me with a fat loss goal, um like I've often given people advice, and they've gone home to whoever's at home and said, look, I need you to do this for me. And I'm like, I did not tell you to go home and give orders to your spouse. You need to understand this. And even trying to communicate that message, and they're like, I don't want to know, I just want you to tell me what to do, and it's like, it's that kind of, what we said, creating friction, where the less friction that it's all, not even tricking them, but in terms of like the less friction that you can create. So it might not be a suitable suggestion in every single scenario, and it may be like, in some people's eyes, you know we said outside what is the norm thing to do is where it's just that kind of ask those questions on kind of, why don't you prep your own food? Like, would you not like to know, or would you not like to be able to cook, or etc, etc. And it's where, if you, for example, like, how do you find that, although we all know the advice is right, how do you then take a client who is in a position of 3 to 4 hours sleep and actually get them to follow step by step? Because even in my experience, and I know a lot of trainers here, find that we all know the information, and it's easy to tell someone what to do, but how to actually make them do it is a whole different side of it.
Yeah, and I think that's like you mentioned with the food there, right? It's like, you need to know this, yeah, but I don't want to know it. Knowledge is power, right? But ignorance is bliss. So it's not knowing what you're eating is one of the, and this is something my partner and I talk about, is that, like, I feel the more I have learned, the more it's been an amazing, like, enlightenment, if you will, of saying, okay, well, I can look at foods on menus and I can judge this and I can assess this. And then at the same time, though, when you didn't know that information, sometimes you just went out and you did it. And so there's that element of paralysis by analysis. The more you know, and the more that people are aware of, suddenly the way that those choices, or the way that the perception of those choices changes, right? And I think that's something, especially for not just males, but potentially more so males. It's kind of like, well, if I don't know, or if I just ignore it, it's not really there. I mean, why do we have all of these issues where men don't get their general health checked? Why men don't go to the doctors? It's like, yeah, it'll sort itself out. Like, it's kind of that thing of, it doesn't matter even if my heart's going to stop tomorrow. I'd rather not someone tell me about it, because then I know that it's not there, like, despite how bad it might be. And I think that's something we don't want to have, that kind of that mirror held up to us, where we have to have a cold, hard look at ourselves and actually acknowledge, okay, my choices are shit. And I think that's where, I don't like the word manipulation, but it's almost kind of like that in terms of like puppet mastery, of going, okay, how do I tweak strings in a certain way to get you to actually open your eyes and take a look at this? And I think some people, that may be via their kids, for example. Like, you have men who are in their 30s or 40s, and you say, okay, well, I understand you may not want to know anything about food, but or you may want to go for a run, or you may not want to work on your cardiovascular health or get some sleep or whatever it is. But I do want to ask you this. Do you want to be around for your kids for another 5, 10, 15 years? Oh, yes, I do. Okay. Do you also want to make the most of that time? Or do you just want to be there, but just kind of be laid out on the couch? Well, I'd really like to play with my kids and I'd like to spend some time in the yard or whatever. Okay. So this is why you're doing what you're doing, right? Like there's a bigger motive here than just yourself. And we've also got to be aware of those who are around us. And I think sometimes that kind of impact on men, women, I believe anyway, in my experience, is like women are usually more aware of that, right? Like they have that kind of, okay, well, I want to be around to take care of people. Not always, but usually. And then you've got men who kind of, they need that massive slap to the face of like, hey, this is not just you, like this is bigger than you. This is for the people you are providing for. You want to be a fix-it person, or you want to provide solutions, or whatever it is. That's fine, but you need to currently fix yourself in order to help fix those around you, or be around, like be the solution for those people around you. And similarly, if that's for food, one thing I would say is that, let's say there's a household where, it sounds really sexist when I say it, but very stereotypical in the sense of the male maybe works, wife comes home, takes care of kids, or whoever it is who's the dominant cooker, right? Like if it's the female that's cooking in the house, or the wife or partner or whoever it may be who's cooking in the house, potentially that's our avenue. So because if they're the person who's doing all the cooking, all the prepping, whatever it may be, then that would be the avenue of, let's talk to that person, because they're probably more likely to be able to instigate change that is also going to stick if this person is not wanting to do anything. So we kind of use that backdoor approach of, okay, well, I was just about to say, can I get the number of your wife? But that's probably, don't say that to clients. Can I get some, like, would you mind bringing your wife down so I can have a chat with her? Or would you mind, if it's the wife and the male does the cooking, would you mind bringing your partner down and I have a chat with them? Just whoever does the cooking at home. Would you mind if, like, or I just print off some information, or can I send them an email, or can I have a chat with them so that they're also on board with it? So you don't feel like, especially in a family sense, you don't feel like you're pulling one member of the family away from everyone else. Because there's a big challenge there, I think, especially on nutrition, is that when we try and make changes, we create isolation. And there's nothing like having people feeling isolated when it comes to a change, because we want to create support, right? And I think, and I've had this with both males and females, is then I'm going to have to cook by myself, or my partner sits on the couch and they eat a packet of biscuits in front of me and they're kind of laughing at like how I've got these foods. And I think, well, okay, I would rather, in that sense, I'd rather help you and your partner, whoever it is, male, female, husband, wife, whatever it may be. It's like, I would rather help the both of you be better in terms of health, and maybe we address both your nutrition and figure out what are the negotiables here that we can work on, because I'm going to have better success with the person who I'm working with. So if I know that, let's say, one person does the cooking, okay, would you guys be willing to do these changes? Like, how are you with cooking and with these changes? And if they say, look, I'm willing to change food regardless, like if you want me to pull things out, change things, whatever, you just tell me what you want and we'll both do it. Perfect. Like we've broken down that wall, but we've opened up so many opportunities, right? But I do believe that a lot of us almost have this intimidation of, well, I don't want to overstep my mark and speak to someone who is not paying for my services. And it's like, yeah, but you need to understand who's in that person's network, or who's in that person's direct social circle. And this is something that I think that if it's same in the workplace, if you know the secretary is the one who does, or the PA or whoever it may be is the one who organizes a lot of things for the person who is currently coming to see you, maybe we should be trying to have a discussion with them about, okay, well, if you're going to be getting lunches, just understand, can you organize some protein shakes to be delivered to whoever at this time? Can you organize this to be done? If you're going to be going out and getting meals, here are some meal companies you could order from. Like, let's work with the people who are in that person's life and are having the impact in that person's life in those areas we need to address. Because if a man, let's say your client who you were mentioning is like, let's say if that male is not interested in food, we're going to be banging our head against a wall trying to get them to, when food was never a thing that they had to take care of for themselves. Maybe it's only breakfast. So it's like they sort their breakfast or they sort their lunch and all these other meals are sorted for them. All right, well, let's address those meals, because now we've got at least a 65 to 80% chance of correcting a lot more things than trying to constantly adjust things that they're just going to be immovable on.
That's actually great trainers, because I know a lot of trainers who struggle and who would come and just, conversations, whether it's in passing or whether it's, on the gym floor, where it's like I just can't get X and Y to do what I want them to do. Um, and again, it's taking that approach of like, okay, if this doesn't work, how can I change? And sending that email, or contacting that partner to kind of have that conversation, um, could save people. So if there is trainers currently struggling with that, I think that piece of information is actually, because if you break down that barrier where you're talking to two of them instead of one of them, then you've got both on your team, and then it's not easy, but it's so much easier than having to. Because I always say that as well, is you want to not create, like I say, friction at home. So you don't want to be sending person A home where, like you said, isolated, they're eating a different meal on the dinner table, they're being made fun of, or there's often been situations with women where the man might be lackadaisy with food and doesn't necessarily care, and that's that. I suppose we won't get into that, but where the woman's trying to make a change and the man is, oh, you're boring, like, can you just relax, can you just come out for a drink, can you just order a Chinese with me? And it's kind of, that's when you create that friction at home as a coach. You want to avoid creating that, because at the end of the day, that person came to you for a certain goal, and if you can't get them there, you need to figure out how to get that. So reaching out to the partner and being able to maybe have a conversation with two instead of one, um would have would have definitely saved me a lot of headaches when I was coaching. But I want to get into so diet.
On that, sorry,
Of
just
course, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but it's like, with the one thing I think that sometimes can be a very easy question to assess early on is just asking, like, does your partner know you're here? Because there's a lot of people who, they go and get training, and the amount of people who, like, especially when I started out training people, men or women, and it's like, does your partner know you're here? And they're like, no, I'm sorting this myself, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, partner, or whatever it may be. It's like, does your partner know you're here? Or do you have a partner? Yes, I do. Or just a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or whatever it may be. It's like, do they know you're here? And if you immediately say no, it's like, do you mind me asking why not? And it's like, oh, well, because I've got my own account and, like, I'm sorting everything else myself. And it's like, okay, we immediately know there's going to be a lack of support structure there if someone's not aware of it. And it's not necessarily a lack of support through an intended, like, trying to pull that person down, or an intended roadblock, but the other person just may not even be aware. Like, if you're on a diet, for example, and you don't tell your partner, and your partner has no clue that you're actually trying to eliminate whatever at the moment, or work on whatever it may be and address things, then she's not in the wrong if she turns around and she's like, oh, hey, Ryan, I'm just going to get some ice cream. Do you want some? It's like, she's not trying to derail you. She just doesn't know that that's something that you're trying to work on. And similarly, if she's going to cook a meal, and let's say you're in a phase where you've gone, okay, well, can you not eat carbs or whatever, or can you reduce your carb intake? And she makes you like spaghetti bolognese. She didn't intentionally derail you. She's not aware of what you're working on. And so I think asking that question early on, in terms of, okay, does your partner know you're here? Yes, they do. Okay, are they supportive or are they not? Like, that's going to be question two, because just because they know you're there, they may be like, no, they don't agree with me being here. They think that it's a waste of time. All right, if they think it's a waste of time and a waste of money, then we're going to have some issues along the way that I may need to be aware of. And I'm going to keep that in the back of my head if things keep running into issues. But it's just stuff that it's like, these are things, again, I know you and I talked earlier about filling in those puzzle pieces, right? It's like, these are the bits of the puzzle that we need to know. If we're going to create a full picture, these are pieces in the puzzle that we need to know. But we may not necessarily need to act on them. We just need to be aware of them, to be in a position where, should something arise, it's not kind of blindsiding us. It's something that we were preempting, and we strategize a way to get around that.
Yeah, no, when we touched on that was a great part. What we talked about was where, like, asking those questions that an initial person may not ask, or that may be uncomfortable to ask. There, like we said, there is the line that it's like you don't want to cross the line, but at the same time, there is things. It's not just as easy as do this workout and eat this meal plan. That's not going to get you results. If, like we said, you are right now, you're a combination of the last however many years you lived, like all the decisions, all the personalities, etc., that you've experienced. You are kind of like a representation of them. So if you've had issues sleeping, or if you've had issues with any illness or anything, like they're going to be a massive thing that made, like we talked off air, where I was saying that if I had a person talk to me, it was like, I'm doing everything perfect, and I went through the entire day, the entire food, she's, I trusted her, which is a big thing. You need to be able to, trust. One of the other things that we, I suppose, won't get into is, how do you know when a client is, telling you the truth, or not just trying to, get a cop out, like, oh yeah, the week was great. But then she went on to explain to me about that she had a bipolar issue, and that she was on medication. And I just kind of asked the question of, could it potentially be that there's side effects to this medication? Like, like, started asking those, I suppose, personal questions, where it's not easy to ask, because you don't because we don't know the person well enough to ask them, if that makes sense. We don't, like, their questions, like I said, you wouldn't even necessarily ask a family member if you knew they were struggling with something, or if you knew they were, because you don't want to bring it up. That every time you bring it up, it affects. So it is very difficult to ask questions like that. Does your partner know you're here? Is your partner supportive? Because if the answer is no, like, that's a difficult position then to be put in, where it's like someone's just told you that, basically their partner doesn't support the choice that they made. So now, like, it's like, okay, shit, what do I say next? That kind of way. So most people wouldn't want to be in that conversation in the first place. But like we said before, I personally think that it's important to know, obviously, as much as possible, while keeping a healthy relationship with the client. And if at any particular time you notice, whether it's a dip in mood, or a change, or even a lack of communication with a client, you can kind of start, like I said, like you said, piecing the puzzle together, and actually understanding, okay, what could be going on here. And rather than, because I had a client before who, I used to drill on food training, like, why aren't you training, why? And I think you had a similar client that you told me, where they said, like, I just love the hour that we train, like, this is my highlight of the week, like, that kind of way. And I was grilling them on food, and when they were coming, I was making their hour miserable, because I was like, why didn't you fucking eat your food? Why didn't you, do your workouts I told you to do during the week by yourself? You're not going to, this is when I was younger, like, I didn't understand. You're not going to get anywhere, you're never going to get results. But I didn't understand that that person was actually getting results by coming to me, just, and spending an hour. So obviously I never asked the questions. I just always thought people came just for one particular goal. And if I had asked those difficult questions early on, I would have, obviously got a lot more information. And it's like you said, the more pieces you have, the easier the puzzle kind of is.
Assuming, right, is that that's where the more we run on that level of assumption of, this person's coming to me, and I know like, people make these jokes, right, about trainers, is that, let's say Karen comes in to see you, and Karen goes, I want to lose 10 kilos. And you're like, fuck yeah, you're going to look amazing in a swimsuit when we get you on stage. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to be on stage. That's definitely not what I want to do. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to feel more comfortable when I go to the beach with my kids. Awesome. You'll look great when you're tanned up and you're on stage. Nope, don't want to be on stage. And it's like, all right, so my assumption is, Karen's coming to me. Karen wants to get absolutely shredded, and Karen wants to be in a position where, like, we're taking photos and she looks stunning lined up next to all these other people, like abs and veins and everything. And she's like, nope, don't have any intention of that. And so without asking those questions, and so that we're not making those assumptions, I think something you mentioned before is that the questions in terms of, let's say, we look at your client who suffers mental health, right, or who is suffering from bipolar, and is needing some type of medication. Now, I spoke to you off air about this, is that like, yeah, I have depression. I take antidepressants for that. Now, if someone asks me, I'm happy to talk about it. I ask people in terms of like, oh, are you on any medications? Are there anything I need to be aware of? Are you, like, if it's women, where are you at with your cycle? Is it a normal, regular cycle? Like, if you don't feel comfortable asking certain questions, don't ask them. Like, if you can't handle the answers that someone's going to give you, don't ask the question, because you're going to make a dick of yourself, and you're going to start very, very obviously making it out that you are uncomfortable. Then you'll make the client uncomfortable. So if you can't turn around and say to someone, hey, look, I see you're on, let's say, antidepressants. I notice you've been on antidepressants. Do you mind me asking how long you've been on them for? Like, it's not an intrusive question depending on how you ask it. And this is where, like, we are health and fitness professionals. We're not fucking kids in the playground making jokes about people who suffer something or who have something or are different. We are people who are guiding people forward. And the more information we know, as long as that information can help create some type of pathway forward, it's relevant. So if someone, for example, is on antidepressant medication, if someone's on some type of gut medication, if someone's on something where they're taking anti-inflammatories every day, or they're alcoholic or whatever else, we're not there to create judgment. It's purely, we need to know, how does that affect their process going forward? But if you decide to turn around and be like, okay, well, you need to fix your alcoholism, or why the fuck can't you get your food sorted out, or why are you having so many hard problems with this? We don't know what's going on with them, and they're not going to be very likely to tell us what's going on if we start ramming into walls and trying to break them down. Like, we're creating an environment where people should feel open enough to tell us the information that they need to share if it is relevant. Like, we're not trying to be their best friend, but we are trying to guide them in the right direction. And if the information is relevant, potentially we need to know about it, if we know what to then do with that information. But if we don't know how to be professional with that information, or if we're going to ask questions that are now going outside of our scope of practice and try and manipulate things that are beyond our scope of practice, okay, well, again, we need to decide, if just because someone's going to give you an answer to something doesn't mean you need to act on it. But we also do need to be aware that if someone, for example, is not yet ready, let's say they're having an issue with food, and you turn around and it's like, I know you mentioned this was when you were younger, but I've seen other trainers do this. It's like, okay, you need to diet. Oh, why are you binge eating? Sort your binge eating out. Why are you binge eating again? And it's like, you're berating this person about binge eating. Okay, you're not fixing the problem. Like, and you're not probably exactly not fucked up yourself. You've probably got something else going on yourself. Don't turn around and start having a go at someone else for finding something difficult that you may now have spent years doing, that you now find like, oh yeah, this is a second nature for me. I can diet, I can train, I can do all these things. That's great. That's not second nature for that person. So we need to allow the client time and the person time to actually come to a point where these things are now becoming more sustainable in their habits. But if you're going to berate someone about something, you're not going to bring change. You're just going to create a dishonesty or some type of deflection that later on down the line, if you ever ask something, they're going to lie to you. And they're not going to lie to you because they want to lie to you. They're lying to you because they'd rather not feel bad about it. So if you're trying to bring a change for something, and let's say it's binge eating, okay, well, I noticed that when we're dieting, you're binge eating on the weekends. Maybe this is not the time for dieting. Do you mind me asking, like, do you have anything that's triggering you with the binge eating? Oh, well, I feel like I really good through the week. I get to the weekend and I'm stressed at home. Okay, maybe we should probably work on taking your food up a little bit so you don't feel like you're binge eating. Maybe we should work on what's stressing you out at home. Maybe we could work on the environment there, if that's possible. Maybe we can work on something that's within your control to allow you feel stronger or more empowered to make changes that, again, are within the variables you can control. And I think that's something is like, if nutrition, I've worked with clients before and I've been with them for 5 months, and I've spent the first few months, okay, this is what we need to do in nutrition. This is what we need to do. This is the changes. This is the changes. They don't do it. And it becomes the message is falling on deaf ears, right? So put the option out there, but understand that change for some people takes time. Some people may not be ready day one. They may not want to change. Just coming to the gym may be enough change for them. And in that situation, as I've also had clients who after 3 or 4 months, 5, 6, 7 months, finally they say, okay, I'd like to work on nutrition now. They are ready. They have come halfway and they've met you at the point that you've put out. But you can't keep running over and slapping them in the face with the nutrition information, expecting that to sink in. And then when they're ready to change, the chance of success is much higher.
You said there, and I think it was a great way that you put it, where it's like, I think you said, what is triggering the binge eating? And I see it personally, especially here in Ireland and a couple of gyms I've been in, where a lot of people, and we talked about this off air as well, where asking the questions and kind of allowing the client to kind of tell you the problems and the solutions is a good way to go about it. In terms of like, I see trainers who tell people what's wrong, sometimes who say the reason why you're binge eating is because you're not doing X and Y, or because it's at home, or it's because of something else. So I do hear sometimes that people actually tell them what their problems are, and not necessarily sit and ask and just have a conversation, because I don't think you can really, kind of diagnose why someone. Now, you could have a fair idea as to why they might be binge eating, but if you create friction, if you tell someone, like if I tell you, there's something wrong with you, essentially, me and you no longer have a good relationship because I've just basically insulted you. But if you insult yourself to me, or you open up to me and I don't judge you for that, that builds a lot of trust. And you can see that I've empathy for everything that you're going through, or etc etc. So then you actually know I'm in the business of helping you, and not actually helping myself.
There's something you mentioned there, is that trying to diagnose, right? You're not dealing with cars. Like, we're not mechanics. We're not just someone who they drop their car off and then at the end of the day they come back and you're like, well, I can see you've got a flat tire, and I can see based on this you're missing a spark plug. It's like the answers are there. And then if they bring in a more complicated issue, then okay, well, I need to spend a little bit more time and actually diagnosing the problem, if you will. Humans aren't that way inclined. Like, unless you have someone that you have had from day dot all the way through to, let's say, 30, and you've seen every single moment and every single development they've gone through, issue, whatever else, and choice they've made, then you may be able to start going, okay, well, I can see that when you made this decision when you were 5, that made a really bad decision about hamburgers, because you got a hamburger fell on your head and you got burnt. And it's like, right, so we can see what may have caused it, right? Like, what may have led to that. But we don't have that ability as trainers for someone to come in and say, well, I suffer binge eating. And you can say, okay, well, I can see you suffer binge eating because of X. No, you don't know. We have no clue. You're not a therapist. You're not unpacking that person's shit. You're not trying to sit there and go, okay, I need to delve through everything. You're trying to help them move forward. Now, you can provide tools to help them move forward, and dieting or whatever it may be, or excess training or cardiovascular conditioning or whatever it may not be suitable at the time. So we need to take a different approach. But we still need to remember, at the end of the day, as we're working with individuals, and I know a question you asked me a while back was that would I choose experience over university study, right? And it's like, university study is great. I think study in itself, going and upskilling, doing all those types of things, amazing. We all need to be working on being better in some way and somehow. However, do I think university study is better than personal experience in terms of hours on the gym floor and everything else? No. Because at the end of the day, as you're dealing with people, what you've learned in a textbook doesn't mean you can directly apply it to real life. Because let's say you and your partner came to see me and you both go, okay, we want to lose weight, or we want to get stronger, or whatever we want to do. Okay, fine. I can't give you based on, okay, well, Ryan, here's your diet. Boom, there you go. Off you go and do it. And where's your partner? Cool. There's her diet. Off you go, do it. And expect the same results. She may be like, you run through perfectly. She may be binging every third day. She may be not telling me and underreporting. She may be like overeating on some days. She may be like adding in extra training. And I'm like, well, no, I gave you the plan. The plan should work. Why is it not working? Because we're dealing with humans, and humans are highly complicated. So we have to account for a lot of variables, but the first thing we have to account for is having a discussion and actually gathering information. And more of us also need to be able to be comfortable with sitting down, having a discussion, and sitting in silence waiting for an answer. The amount of people, like if you and I sat in the same room and I asked you a question and you didn't want to answer that question, you can probably wait around 3 seconds, maybe up to 5, and then I'll probably jump in and fill in the answer. And the moment you do that once or twice, you very quickly learn, okay, well, if my trainer asks me a question and I'm not comfortable, I'll create some awkward silence. Then they'll fill in the gap anyway, or they'll ask me something else or fill in with an answer. And then all I need to do is nod. And now they feel they're getting the answer they wanted to hear. But that's not the answer that's accurate. That's just the answer that we believed or we assumed at the time. So you need to be able to ask a question. And I say to you, okay, Ryan, why do you want to lose weight? And you may sit there for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm like, I don't mind. I can wait. Like, I'm not in a rush here. So take your time. And then finally I get out, oh, it's actually because, like, look, my birthday's coming up. It's a really big birthday. Like, yeah, there's more to it than just I wanted to drop 5 kilos. Like, there's something at the base of that, right? Like, yes, sometimes it's just you want to lose weight, and sure, that's a good goal. But why do you want to lose weight? Because why are you going to want to sustain that? Or why do you want to gain size? Or why do you want to lift more? Or why do you want to run faster? Like, what's the reason behind it? You don't just wake up one day and pick an arbitrary number and go, I want to lose X, or I want to be 160 kilos and shredded. Why?
And
Like, what's your motivation?
I agree. The first thing I do when a client comes to me is ask them, why have you come to me? Like, what, honestly, could I do to help you? Because, or if there's any goal that you have, you need to tell me, because until I break down that barrier of what that person wants and why they want it, it's very difficult to actually understand. And because if someone can say to you, well, I want to lose weight, and it's like, okay, well, you've given them this plan, and they're not doing it. It's like, why aren't they doing it if they want this? You know what I mean? So sometimes, like I said, and again, people will come in and they'll, like you said, creating that awkward silence where, and I think a lot of trainers need to take that approach as well. That was a great kind of piece that you said where, like, you need to ask those questions, and okay, if you're not comfortable doing so, don't ask them. And the experience on the floor, I think a lot of people, like they said, they go and they research and they study, and they become experts in a particular field, whether that's bodybuilding, whether it's drugs, wherever, and they have that kind of like model that they just you come to me and you look like this, and I think, like we talked, where it's like 90% of the people that we train on a day-to-day basis are general population. And the one thing we can count, like you said, is humans, and they're very complicated. So understanding why they want to do something, understanding if something just happened, like literally if someone signed up to your online coaching at 4 o'clock in the morning, um on a Saturday night, it could be because they had a fight with their spouse, and do you know what I mean, and now they're like, right, I'm going to change my life like that. And like even understanding or even looking at like that can help paint a better picture. And like you said, the more pieces you have, the better it can get, um or the better advice that you can give to a client. But I definitely think people need to adopt that. But it's not an easy thing to do, because it comes across like you don't want to help the person, or that you're you know like it's a difficult thing to do, because sometimes I see it, and I see where people will talk about mental health personally, and everybody that comes to them, they will almost tell them that this is for your mental health, this is what you need to do. And that may not be true for everybody that they see. Like, they're saying that I'm improving your mental health, I'm improving your mental health by coming to me, I'm improving your mental health. And that's the context of the message that they spread out. This is I suppose a trainer, um where it's like, the kind of background message that I see to that is that you're telling someone they're broken, but they may not be broken in the first place. Where, like, you may be saying to someone, yeah, like, I, with training with me, your mental health will go up, this will go up. And like, they throw the word mental health in there because it's kind of like it's kind of like a big thing. Obviously, a lot more attention has been brought around it, which is great. But then there's the trainers who might manipulate it and say, I can improve your mental health. It's like, but by training alone, do you think, obviously there is science to say that training does improve it, but it's not the only source of improving it. And if someone hasn't got an issue in the first place, by you telling them they can improve it, do they then judge themselves to say that maybe I'm not as mentally strong as I could be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I guess that jumps out is like, if you're going to go around toting what you can improve. So let's say you're like, oh, well, you come to see me and I'll improve your mental health. I'll do this. I'll do this. It's all fucking talk, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day is that we can all say that. Like you could come to me and I can say, all right, Ryan, I can get your train with me because I'll get you bench up. I'll get you bench up to 200 kilos and I'll get you jacked. Okay. But like, you don't need to tell him, just do it. Like do the job, do what the person is paying you to do that. Like your client should be able to turn around and say to you in a month, 6 months, whatever it may be, is like, I've noticed there's been a big improvement in my mental health. That's awesome. Like there's a lot of people out there who like to blow their trumpets in terms of what they can do. You tend to notice those people who blow their trumpets really loud don't know jack shit. But the people who don't really, and I sit conflicted on this because I think the people who can do the greatest good, they're very outspoken, and they don't necessarily, well, they don't speak loudly and as confidently as they should of themselves, right? And so the people who are out there to, yes, maybe they're trying to make a difference, but they're doing it by kind of screaming at the rooftops like how amazing they are and everything else. And so they're drowning out everyone else, right? And so they're creating a lot of attention that way. And I think there's something, we like keywords that people can latch onto, and keywords that also create fear that if you don't follow this, something's going to be wrong. Like look at the whole gut health, mental health, gut health. Shit, you want to talk about like keywords that people can say in terms of, oh yeah, well, you've got, if I throw in some medical terms and oh, you've got a microbiome deficiency, and it's like, oh shit, how did you know that? Oh, well, based on this, this, and this, and you're showing me that your gut bacteria and your gut flora are nearing the ends of their life. Oh my God. And it's like, you don't fucking know. We don't have the testing out there to be doing that. And that's also not your scope of practice. Like, leave that to a medical professional to say that. But if I throw around big words that can create scare tactics, or that can create fear, or create whatever it is to create some form of buy-in, then I can use these words to manipulate people to do what I need them to do. But yet you think about, like, let's say the mental health side of things. You go, okay, you're coming to see me to improve your mental health. But how do you know that you're giving them the exercises that are going to improve their mental health to the best ability? How do you know that, like, you come and see me and I say, all right, Ryan, we're going to do back squats today. Maybe that's the worst thing for you. Maybe you absolutely hate them and you're terrified of them. But I'm like, no, we're going to do back squats today. Get your ass in there. Then we're going to be combining that with, we're going to do heaps of chin-ups afterwards. And you're like, you're terrified of heights, even though you're not that high off the floor. You're like, no, I'm terrified of heights, so I'd rather not do them. Fuck it, get up there. And then it's like, now we're going to finish with arm training. And you're just like, all I wanted to do was I'd like to learn to run better. And I've really been interested in calisthenics or bodyweight movements. That's what gives you the most happiness. So we're not optimizing someone's mental health. We're, if anything, deteriorating it. But now we're creating fear around, if they don't come and see you, their mental health, which may or may not already be in a good place, is suddenly going to be worse. And these are the things that's like, your job is not to improve necessarily one area of someone's life. If someone's coming to see you, health is such an encompassing factor that, yes, it consists of spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, like it's all these different things, right? And then all of that has offshoots as well. And we've got to be trying to look at, how do we optimize, or how do we improve those areas as a whole, but then also some areas may need more attention. Now, if you're not someone who specializes in nutrition, okay, that's probably not your area to be working on, but just understand that you can kind of work in a very, very basic sense, but you shouldn't be giving detailed information. Do you even have the qualifications to be giving it? Yes or no? And it's like, if you don't, which most people don't be giving specific information that could shoot you in the ass later. I mean, I don't know what it's like over in Ireland, but especially here in Australia, is the like the risk of court cases and being sued and all that type of stuff of doing damage and doing misguided or mispracticed information is pretty high, in the sense of like your risk is very high as a trainer. So you get qualified or stay out of it. But when it comes to improving things, it's like, you cannot say to someone, if you come and see me and do exercise, I'm improving your mental health, or I'm going to improve X, or whatever it may be. It's more what consists of that. Now we think of like what boosts your mental health? Sleep, feeling good, like positive perceptions, right? In terms of your emotional well-being and outlook on life. Food, yes, can have an impact. Relationships can have an impact. Having a good social network can have an impact. Having a purpose can have an impact. You can't address all of that. So yes, you may be contributing it to, but you can't tote that you're the one person improving that.
I 100% agree. And I think on that note, Shane, I think we'll just wrap it up. We're just coming up to an hour and a half, so so like I said, where can people find you if they want to find more about you and they like what you're saying and stuff like that?
So you can find me. So I feel like this is where I need like a web page and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Damn. So you can find me. So I'm on Instagram at Shane O'Leary Fitness. But as I say, I work for Muscle Nerds. We're Muscle Nerds Health. So at Muscle Nerds Health, we're an Australian-based company. You'll find me. So in terms of there's at True Fitness PT, which is a colleague of mine. There's at Luke Lehman, and then there's at Zoe Knight. We're all kind of a collective that work together in terms of representing Muscle Nerds Health. So yeah, we do education in terms of like, we teach a lot of this stuff, man. It's like we try and help trainers be better trainers and be better versions of themselves. And that's why we put the courses out there, to try and help trainers be better trainers to a lot of general pop clients as well, is because people aren't teaching that stuff. And we do. We teach you how to deal with the psychological side of things. We teach you how to deal with stress management. We teach you how to deal with some nutrition. We teach you how to deal with long-term periodization, all those types of things. But we also teach you just how to think. And that's the biggest thing, is just teaching people to be able to learn effectively and be able to critically evaluate and critically think and build better careers moving forward. That's the one thing for our students, is we want all of our students to thrive with businesses, because then that leaves a bigger impact, right? It's like, it's thinking about that bigger footprint. It's the same way, you don't want to just affect one client, you want to affect all your clients, and then your trainers who are underneath you, you want them to all affect all of their clients. So yeah, you can find me at Shane O'Leary Fitness or at Muscle Nerds Health.
Super, perfect. I really appreciate taking the time out of your day. I know there's time difference, so yes, excuse if I was a little bit groggy. It's a little bit early. I'm used to doing these at more like, like midday, kind of lunchtime. I have a bit of food in me and stuff like that. But no, super. I appreciate your time. And yeah, I think we'll call it quits there.